floor is yours, Scott.
Okay, and the slides are showing.
Absolutely.
Okay. Welcome to US EDU office hours for security. We're going to go over something a little different today. We're going to be talking about Azure ARC. Azure ARC has actually been around for a little while. So one of my colleagues asked me the other day, well, have you played with this Azure ARC thing? And I was like, well, yeah. So Azure ARC was actually in, if I get the right date, it's like April of 2020. And so this has been around a little while. So let's go over and talk a little bit about it. And then I'm going to do some demos and some feature updates that we have. So in here, it is really about management of environments. So if you look at many of our customers' environments today, it's clear they continue to grow in complexity, right? You have that influx of technology and platforms, you have current investments, and that's true for most customers. Applications running across a completely diverse infrastructure with data centers and hosting fences, multi-cloud, multi-public cloud, multi-private cloud. And to that, you're using different development tools, frameworks, or open source, Kubernetes, DevOps, whichever the case may be. And so one of the things is how to govern this and secure those resources regardless of where they're running, and then bring those cloud innovations to the existing infrastructure. How to modernize your local data centers with cloud infrastructure, and then how to extend that compute to the cloud, right? So one of the things that we're looking at is, we want to make sure and serve you where you are, right? So those experiences working with customers, there's few key reasons for hybrid and multi-cloud strategies. Some workloads can't be moved to the public cloud due to regulatory, data sovereignty, old applications, right? That just won't move for some reason. Some workloads, especially edge workloads, require low latency. Okay, that's fine. And many companies have significant on-premise investments where they just choose to do that. And so they have on-premise data centers and traditional apps. But it's important to have the freedom to use more than one public cloud as well. So as we go through, this is a stat that was interesting. 90% of enterprises depend on hybrid. Well, that's because you have your on-prem environments, right? And you need that. And they're not too sure about putting everything into one public cloud, so they have multiple cloud strategy going on. So our idea is Azure ARC to innovate wherever you are, right? So across the entire environment. So in Azure, obviously, but also AWS and GCP, your on-premise, VMware, on-premise, multi-cloud, and edge. We can do that in a couple different ways. We have obviously application services, data services, Kubernetes, AKS. Our partners really are excited about this. That's one of the things about it. But we also have multi-cloud customers. And with this, we keep building on it. As you'll see in a second, how we keep building on that. We have improved by doing infrastructure on-prem through Azure Stack, if you're not familiar with that. Azure IoT is down to the edge, so we can get out there and provide that hybrid infrastructure as well as your control plane out in Azure, so that you have that unified operations and management piece. And then you can build those cloud native apps on top of that and run those Azure services anywhere, so that you can start moving that equipment from legacy out to a total environment that's supported in a high scalability fashion. So as we go down, we want those unified operations and management with ARC to begin so that you can build those segments on top of that. So we organize your inventory, we get everything into a single unified operations management tool in Azure ARC so that you can monitor, update, and then there are governance pieces and security built on top of this. So along with this investment, Azure ARC is the container, but you need more than just the container. You need additional services. So after you get organized, you can start building those cloud native and run Azure services in there. That's going to help your developers running Kubernetes. If you're running AKS on Azure Stack and HCI, that's something available to you if you feel more in that scenario where you need that workload closer, that's fine. But you can do automated security and conformance against that. So that gives you the ability to do that configuration and make sure that you're compliant. So one of the things is that because it's cloud-based, we can run those services and run them anywhere, but in a high scalable and ever-changing environment, because what this allows us to do is bring those services in and add on it. As you go into the managed instances, and I'll show you in a second, you can modernize those data estates with data services and get that done. Excuse me. Modernize your data estates with the data services using unified management. Move those workloads, SQL managed instances away from your on-premise into a more high availability state. And you still get the availability of moving all those pieces into a single location. For those of you that don't know, Azure Stack HCI is our on-prem hyperconverged infrastructure piece that works with Edge and Stack Hub as well. So you get those integrated pieces, but Azure ARC works across all those pieces so that you can get that management. So that gives you the entire stack, and that is pretty much it. I want to share out this piece now, and I'll show you some. Okay. So in the console, you get quite a bit of different things. So I'm in Azure under Azure ARC. There are a few pieces in here. I'm going to throw some other links in the chat as soon as I get a chance of all the things that we need to talk about in that particular scenario. But as we go through this, whoa, that's not share me. As we go through this, we can see all of these pieces. There is a hands-on with Azure ARC Box. We'll talk about that in a second. It's a sandbox to help you learn all the environment. As you go through the list, I've already done some of these, so as we'll skip down to the server piece, and I'll show you some of the pieces here. As I got a few servers already onboarded, you can onboard those pieces and you have direct access to those servers. So in this case, I have a domain controller and file server. As I do these, you get that flexibility of looking at this. Now, for those of you that use Windows Admin Center, some of this will be in here as well. As you'll notice, this is now in preview so that you can do that. But this gives you an overall statistical view of everything in your server farm and gives you that direct connect. Anytime that you want to add things, you can actually add extensions on, and those extensions get deployed out to your server farm so that you can automatically keep control of those. In this case, I'm using Defender for Cloud, and I'm using Azure Sentinel. And I'm using the Admin Center as well, so the Windows Admin Center. Those give you that capability to do all of this in a single pane. This gives you also the ability to do updates. So if you enroll in the update service, which is included in Azure ARC at no cost, you can go through and pull these out and do patching. So this upgrades you from either your on-prem with servers or SCCM environment to a cloud managed environment where you're able to do those updates through the management center. You can also schedule those updates and regular downtimes so that you can schedule all of that in a single pane. Not only that, you can do single updates, one update at a time, or if needed, if there's an update that doesn't need to be pushed or you wish to delay it, you can do that as well. There are all the new pieces are in here as well. Some of the recent changes is the Windows Admin Center. So if you're currently using Admin Center on-prem, this functionality currently is in preview. This does override your on-prem Windows Admin Center. So your servers will be connected to Azure ARC, but this gives you the ability to place a MFA conditional access policies around your Windows Admin Center via the cloud process. You still get all the pieces that are currently in the Windows Admin Center so that you can see what is going on in your environment. And you also get real-time statistics on CPU memory utilization and your overall Ethernet process, as well as all the other things that are currently in Windows Admin Center. You also get the added benefit of connecting to the remote desktop. The remote desktop basically does a KVM directly to your box. Even though this is an Azure service, there's no gateway needed or firewall configuration changes. This allows you to remote desktop directly from the Azure portal into your resources on-prem. Additionally, you can import, and I'm sorry, I don't have anything in here, but you can also onboard SQL servers, VMware vCenters, SCVMM, which is System Center Virtual Machine Management, and then those are currently in preview. Additionally, anything that you have in SQL managed instances, this would be your Azure ARC enabled for Azure SQL Server managed databases. That's a little hard. That infrastructure can be built out in here, and you can control that as well. There is a full API management coming, so that application services can be done in here, and you can do that. There are a few things I want to talk about in the management section. So there are custom locations. There is some pieces in here so that you can have custom locations. This gives you the ability to map your on-premise and infrastructure environment to Azure and manage those virtual infrastructures. So, and run services like Azure functions in your own data center. The data controllers is for Kubernetes environments. If you're running Kubernetes, you can get those data controllers. There is something else in here, resource bridges. This goes along with that. It currently is in preview, but what it allows you to do is deploy a virtual machine that's prepackaged with built-in Kubernetes and allows you to have that appliance on a VM in a self-service on-prem from Azure without the customer creating and managing the cluster from scratch. So those are kind of some of the features. I will place in the chat window some additional things that I want to make sure and point out. Because in this, there is an overview guide, and the guide is pretty good. I'm not gonna, that's fine. But the chat, I want to show you some other pieces in here. So the Windows Admin Center is currently in preview. I talked about that a little bit. I will post that in the chat as well. There is a complete training set on Azure ARC, which gives you all the capabilities to learn those. But maybe that isn't enough for you. So we offer another piece called Azure ARC Jumpstart. Not familiar with these, Azure Jumpstart packs are a technology that allows you to deploy a completed sandbox of everything that you need to do a complete scenario. So in this case, there is an ARC box full with all the experiences and enabled Kubernetes data service capabilities. Azure ARC for IT pros is a full Sentinel, or I'm sorry, Azure ARC enabled sandbox, but it's a mix of Windows and Linux servers and to help you with Defender for Cloud and policy and update management. And then for those developers or DevOps out there that they want to do something with Kubernetes, there's a sandbox for that as well, so that you can do that. Each one of these ones are fully capable, and what happens is you go through this list and you can check out those. There are other Jumpstart boxes as well, so there is a HCI box if you want to learn about Azure Stack HCI capabilities. We do have a jump box for that. It's pretty interesting to do that, and it gets you started with a 2-node cluster, so you learn all about those. If you haven't investigated jump boxes before, jump starts, I really say that it's a good thing. There are quite a few of them available, so that you can go ahead and learn all about those, and I'll put that in the chat as well. The only other I went through everything pretty quick. I didn't think I'd go through it that fast. Okay. Well, that's pretty much it. Any questions or comments?
So one of the things I would like to make a comment on is if you're looking at deploying Defender for Cloud, if you're going to do that outside of the Azure fabric itself, this is the piece that you're going to use to deploy it to your on-prem. This is the piece that you're going to use to deploy it to other clouds as well, because this becomes that link, that fabric between the other clouds and your private cloud and Microsoft Azure, so that it gives you that total pane of glass.
Yep, exactly. That's done in here, so you can add and go through and add those extensions.
And while we didn't get into pricing or anything like that, there's a lot of free pieces inside of Azure ARC that you can use at no cost. Anything that you're doing, with Defender for Cloud, there is no cost for Azure ARC. We're not the Azure ARC, pricing specialist or anything like that. That would be your Azure specialist that can definitely help you with that. But there's a lot of really nifty, cool things that you can do with Azure ARC without incurring any costs. So something to definitely take a look at.
Yep. And the previews are really good. I've been working with the previews, and they really are a step forward in management. It gives you a lot of capabilities that you're going to see more investment in as we go forward.
All right. If there's no questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And if there's some questions that you don't feel like being recorded, well, you'll get to ask those after I stop the recording.